Hello everyone and welcome to lesson number 21 of the FX Masters program. We're going to go now and prepare a scene to be able to simulate the ash in the air you can see here in this film, an avatar. Like I said before in the previous lesson, we're going to be able to use this technique for many other scenarios where particulate has to be, floating in the air or on the water, right? Later on a different lesson, okay, we're going to do the interaction. So when the banshee is landing, okay, and then moving his wings, we're also going to do that, but we're going to do it on a separate lesson because it has a couple more extra things that you should know. Okay, my internet just failed, but basically, well, once it comes back, okay, there we go. You will see that there's ash in the air, and you will also see. Don't worry about the banshee landing because it's not yet. I'm going to do it a bit later. But I think I mentioned it before, but subtleties, even here with the ashes in the air, right? Okay, the little things burning and falling down, we're going to do something like that as well later. But my point is that it's a technique that is used quite a lot in film. I'm not saying that Avatar used it on every single shot that had that kind of elements, because it's such a big film and they have so much of a budget. They may have someone on the R&D department do something a little bit different. But for you guys at home and working in a normal size studio, and myself included, okay, I've used that technique many times. It's very interesting, it's very impressive, okay, and it gives you a lot of control and a lot of power. So subtleties is what makes these films like Avatar stand out and be so well received and loved, right? Subtleties. I can tell you, it might not be easy for you to spot it, okay, but I can tell you that Jake, as he walks through the ash, he's moving the air around it and he's pushing the ash away. And that doesn't have to be done with collisions. It can be done using what we're going to be using today. Subtleties. You may not see it if I don't tell you. You have to look for it, but it's there. It's there and it works. So, you need to start putting in, and the deeper you get into this course, you need to start putting more eye to attention, okay? That's what I thought, that having those lessons of the work groups that I proposed to have in January, I find them, I found them. I think we're going to have to wait because the general idea was that you guys wanted to wait. So, but I'm saying that you need to jump onto those things as soon as possible because we need to start working on that, okay? Attention to detail, okay? Sometimes you may find it useless probably to do certain things, but they need to be there in order for these things to work. Okay, they need to do 200% for these things to look real. So this kind of stuff, it might look simple to you, or it might look, pointless in a way, but it's needed. Jake needs to walk around and move the air around because that's what actually happens. So if you're trying to do and put so much money on a believable environment and textures and lighting and high resolution models, imagine spending all that time and all that money and then failing because Jake doesn't feel connected to the environment, right? Through the effects. That's terrible, right? So we need to start to put some more and more attention to detail. Attention to detail, very important. I've been kind of condescending and kind of soft in one way with my comments on the group, and okay. But the deeper we get, okay, the more advanced we're getting, the more picky, okay, I'm going to become. I'm going to start asking for more and more of you because I know you can do it. Right? So we need Jake to move around freely. Let the animators decide what to do. I don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care what he does and what he moves around. I'm just going to do, once they're done with their simulation or with the animation, I'm going to do my simulation. I'm going to have him disturb the air around him, and I'm going to have the particles move because of that disruption of that current of air, okay? That's what we're going to do. All right, so for that scene, this is the previous one we just finished, lesson number 20. This is lesson 21. for that lesson 20, I'm going to use, sorry, for lesson 21, I'm going to use, let me just think. I get my human walking here, so let's see. Oh, there he is. Let me just put a material on him. Okay, this is gonna play, this is gonna be Jake. Oh, he's not walking. 1 second, I thought I had him walking, but that's not what I want. It could be that I could delete the cache, probably. I was cleaning my hard drive and I deleted the cache. So let me make sure that, let me just see. I don't need any of this. I want to see if he walks. Okay, he walks. All right, we're going to use this scene. Okay. All right, so we get this scene from your layout department. Let's say, okay, you got the scene, and this is Jake wandering through the ash in your shot. Okay, so he's here. He starts to walk on frame 70. This is normal because we usually ask for what is called a pre-roll, so we don't want the simulation, so the animation to begin right in the first frame. We need some time for the fluid container to settle. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but then we have this guy walking. Assume that that's Jake. Perfect. If you want, I can give you this. It's a bit of an ugly model, but at least you have something. So I'm going to put that on the FTP for this. All right, cool. So I got this scene. Let's create a camera, as usual. Make sure that we're looking through it. We frame the guy. And let's see where he is. So he tends to walk like that. Okay. And let's see. He comes and turns. So I can probably go a little bit further back. Okay, he comes in and turns. It's like modeling, right? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my camera. I'm gonna go to the first frame. I'm gonna grab my camera and I'm gonna lock translation and rotation with a keyframe. And here's my film gate. And I'm also going to show my ground plane. Okay, this is my floor. I can call this floor layer. Okay, perfect. So I can give you, so let me just put this back. Okay, so I can give you this scene and put it on the FTP just to begin if you want to, but I know that you have better geometry and things, but you can at least use this if you want. Okay, so I'm gonna call this my lesson 21. Okay, so this is gonna be on the FTP for you. When you watch this lesson, it will be up already. This channel box. Okay, this is ridiculous. 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay. It's not annoying at all, right? God damn it. Okay, go place yourself here. Okay, good. Here's my channel box. Okay, so this scene is going to be ready for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin our simulation. Remember what we learned from the previous lesson. First step, let's create a 3D container. And here it is. Look at it to the perspective. And I'm lucky because it's not that big. The scene, I mean. Here's my container. Perfect. So I'm going to look through the top in order for me to place the container in the right area and give it some room. So I'm just going to start by grabbing my container here. Okay, and I'm going to say my size in the x-axis, which is the one running wide like that, it will be probably 30. And my z-axis is going to be 60. And I'm going to see if that works. This is normal. Okay, this is just a representation of density. What I'm going to do so I can scrub, okay, my timeline here. So I'm going to move this timeline around. So what I'm going to do is disable the fluid for now. Okay. All right, so I disabled the fluid so I can scrub freely. It's just like particles, right? You cannot scrub freely if you have them turned on. So you have to disable them in order for you to move and determine quickly if this container needs to be bigger. So I can see here that he turns somewhere there. So I'm going to have to increase, okay, my size in Z and move it here. So again, let's just check. He starts there. That's good. He comes and comes and comes and turns. That's good. Then he goes here, is touching, so I'm going to have to make it even bigger. All right. Let me see. He's going there, so I can probably go somewhere here. He comes and comes and comes and comes and then turns. I might be a little bit too big on this axis, but we can probably later tweak it. What I care for is now he turns here. Okay, so I'm going to have to go in X also wider. So here I have this and this. Okay, I think it's good. I can probably go a little bit smaller on this axis. Let's see. He starts here. That's good. There. I can probably move it because I have a little bit more room on the tops here. So again, he starts there. That's fine. He ends here. That's good. He moves to one side and the other, then down. I think it's fine. This is a good container. Let's check the height. Okay, the height is set to 10. I think we're going to need probably 20 more. Let's try 30. Okay, let's look at it through the side view and place that so the floor, okay, of the container matches the floor on the shot, right? Okay, good. So this is a container that is of the dimensions that I'm going to need. And you may wonder, well, okay, that's good. Based on what you told me in the previous lesson, Luis, then you're going to need a 10-to-1 ratio for this container to be for film. And yes, that's perfectly correct. But in this case, you're not going to render this fluid. You see? You see the trick? You're not going to render this fluid. This fluid is going to be a force field. What you're going to render are the particles. That's a different thing. So what does it mean? It means you don't need to go that high. You don't need to work with a 10-to-1 ratio, so you can have a bigger container. You see that? You see why it's so important to understand this from the beginning? I'm not going to render it, so why do I need so much resolution? Not necessarily. Very important. That's good news for you. So your scene is the right size. Your container is the right size. If I want to have a 1-to-1 ratio, I just need to go in here and put 90. Right? So it matches this axis. You see, I put 90 and it didn't change. Don't panic. It's normal. Just deselect the container, grab it right back, and if it doesn't change, just move forward or backwards one frame. And nothing happens. Nothing happens because it's disabled. You see, don't panic, just follow the steps. Follow the steps. Doesn't mean that it's broken, doesn't mean that you did something wrong. Don't worry. Okay? You deselect, reselect, it doesn't change, then you move one frame forward or backwards, doesn't change, it's because it's disabled. That's it. Alright. So this container is fine. I have a 1-to-1 ratio. I can rewind and I can re-enable my fluid, and it's a good time to save my scene. Perfect. Good. This container, as you can see, it comes with, we just open the outliner, and they come with an emitter already attached. And the emitter is parented to the fluid. This is just so you can move the container and the emitter will go with it, but there's no really connection here other than the emitter is just working with the container. But What I mean by this is if you unparent this thing, it's okay, it'll still work. They just do it as a convenience for you, so they assume that you want to move the emitter and the container together. That's all. That's all. Okay, if I hit 5, okay, I go to shaded mode. Take a look at my container, right? As you can see, it hasn't updated yet, so I'm going to rewind again. And now it did, but the numbers are the same. So deselect, reselect, and now it's fine. Do you want to know if this was going to work or not on my computer? I think it's worth trying. So we need to multiply the 90 times 30 times 50. And that gives you 135,000 voxels. Piece of cake. No problem at all. And this shouldn't take long. This is not a simulation that's going to be very complex. There's no need for that. That's the beauty of this technique. You can have a low resolution container, relatively low. I mean, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's 135,000 voxels. And it's probably going to be enough. We may need to put a little bit more because it's a film and you want to make it look extra cool. Okay? But it's not going to be that much more. So it's going to be a very quick simulation. So think of this and feel proud of it. You're doing a simulation in the same way that is done for a film as big as Avatar. How cool is that at home? With your regular computer, you are doing it. Meaning you can have a discussion with an employer and tell them that you understand how everything works on that film. And you can do it at home because you understand it. And if they give you a proper computer, then you can do even better than that. You see my friends, my brothers and sisters here? Do you see why I assure you you're going to get good jobs with these things? That's why. No fear. No fear. Avatar, yeah, it's a fantastic film. It's my favorite film. It's my pride. Okay? But you can do it. You can get there. Okay? It's not this big unicorn, that it just lives in the magic land that yeah, New Zealand's far away, but that's all. Just a plane ride. That's it. So it's possible. Okay? Don't ever doubt it. Don't let anyone, push you from that idea. It is possible. It is possible. All right, guys and girls. We're here. Okay, we got what we need. Perfect. Okay. So how do we make this work? How do we make this work? So far we set up the container. We have the right size. We have the proper resolution. We got our guy, our camera, our floor. Okay, but how do we make that? How do we go from the next step? Okay, no problem. First thing I told you, remember, don't let this be visible, this bottom resolution. So I'm going to grab my container. I'm going to go to the boundary draw, and I'm going to set that to bounding box. First step. And I'll save this thing again. So for a fluid simulation to work, okay, for it to be able to work, you need to have substance. Okay, so let me just explain a little bit better. If you're going to do an explosion or a fire, okay, you need, just like in real life, 3 different elements. If you want fire in real life, what do you need? You need oxygen, you need a fuel, something to burn, right? And you need an ignition source. 3. Okay, my other fluid containers work the same way. We're not doing fire, we're not doing an explosion, okay. But for a fluid simulation to happen and to have something, some substance, yes, you need to give it something to work with. And that's what is called as density in a fluid container. Density. Very, very important stuff. Without density, there's nothing in here to move. So there's no air, like a vacuum. So far this is a vacuum because there's no density being inputted in here. When you're doing fire and explosions and all that, what you're rendering, what you can see through the render is actual density. That's what you will see. In this case, we're not going to render density, but it needs to be there. Tricky, no? All right, this fluid emitter is going to be responsible for that. So what do I want? And you have to start thinking about these things in terms of real life. What do I want in here? I want this box to be full with air. Think of it as that's the area where Jake is walking, right? So there's air everywhere. We need to have it contained in here because, of course, for the calculations, we cannot spread it all over the area. So we determine that Jake is not going to get out of this box. But that box is full of air. So that box is to be full with density. Yeah? Cool. If you need to fill this box with density, if you start like we have right now with just an omni emitter, if you hit play, then you'll get density. Where's the density? Right there. That little white stuff. That's density. As you can see, it took 37 frames to just this little bit here. So if I want to fill the entire box with just one little omni emitter, it's not going to happen. But luckily enough, you already took particles and you know a lot about emitters. And I don't have to tell you that you can go in here. I don't like the order of this thing. This is so annoying, man. Damn it. Oh, I want it there. Well, anyway. I don't have to tell you that you can grab your emitter, go in here and change the emitter type just like with particles, and do a volume. Do you see why I teach particles first? Because it's easier, and then once you get to fluids, this is very familiar to you. So you get your fluid emitter as a volume. Then you can just go in and say, I don't know, 10. And then what I'm going to do is scale it big enough so it's closer to the edges without getting out, because remember that everything that gets out of the container is ignored. So you don't want that. But I'm going to do something like that. Okay, cool. If I rewind and hit play, okay, I get this. And I know you may be wondering, but what the hell's going on? Why does it look like a pill? Right? What the hell is that? Isn't it supposed to be a box? Yeah, it's right. You're right. Grab your emitter, okay, and let's look at the attributes. Let's look at the attributes here. We're going to cover the fluids slowly, okay? I don't want to do a very boring class where I explain every attribute and then wait for another class to use them. It's stupid. We're going to use them and learn them as we move forward. I think it's the most exciting way to continue. I don't want a boring course. For that, you can go buy Noman or buy digital tutors, all that crap. Okay, so I don't want that. I want to be using them and learn them as we move along. So I'm not going to talk about all of them. Right? What I care for in this case, it is something that you pretty much all the time are going to be changing anyway, is something called on the emitter, right? Down here under the fluid attributes, there's something called fluid drop-off. And the drop-off, think of it as the attenuation on a force field. Yeah. So the further away you get from the center in all directions, this thing is weaker. You see? That's how it fades off. It's very deep and thick in here of density, and it gets thinner as you get to the edge. That's because this number is set to 2. If you set it to 4, you rewind and play, then it's amplified, you see? Does it mean that you go to 1 and it gets reduced? Yes. It's reduced, but you still get this round edge. So if you want to fill the entire box quickly, then put that thing to 0. And there you go. You see, in 1 frame, the box is full. Cool. Okay, so I get density. Now you have to be careful with this thing. At the moment, this container here, okay, this is the container, remember, and this is the emitter. The container, which is right here, okay, it's a box. And it's a box with no holes. It's perfectly closed. So what does it mean? It means that my density that you have in here, the white stuff that you can see, okay, on this area here, the white, is not going to be able to escape. And that's okay. I don't want it to escape because I do want it to be caught inside and moved around. And that motion is what's going to be passing on to the particles and make it look super cool. So you don't really want to open this box. But also what you don't want to do is keep injecting density constantly, because it might just become a mess. It'll be so heavy and so thick with density that it's not going to look interesting. That's my tip. So what are we going to do? We're going to keyframe the simulation or the density output, just so we have enough to fill the box, and that's it. All right, so we're going to do that. Let's grab it in here. First of all, we only need density in this particular example. We're not doing fire, right? We're not doing fire. So if we're not doing fire, we don't need heat, as you can see here on my emitter. So I'm going to take it to no emission. I'm not doing fire, so I don't need fuel. I'll turn it off. This is better, because even though you're not using it, why emitting those things? It's more data that is useless, so turn it off. I only care for density. Okay, so what I'm going to do is keyframe this number. I'm going to give it some time. Okay, I'm going to keyframe it on the first frame at 1. I'm going to let it run for a little bit. Let's say that's it. Okay, 36 frames. I'm going to keyframe it again. And then on the next frame, I'm just going to turn it off. It's just like a particle emitter. If I turn it off, no more density comes in, but the density cannot escape because it's a closed box. Perfect. Let's try it. There's my density. It's emitted. Keep emitting, off. Okay, density will bounce and fill and expand and fill the entire box. Take a look. Perfect. So this box is full with air. This is the wireframe mode. Okay, particles or the fluids are represented as particles. As when you go to find wireframe, that's what you see. Something familiar, right? It looks like a lot of particles. And there's my guy. Very cool. Okay, I got that. This is definitely uncomfortable to work with, to look at, okay? Because I don't see my guy, right? But I don't need to see the density. I know that it's there and I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna grab my fluid, and under the display tab, the same tab that we used to draw this boundary box, remember? There is the shaded display and it says as rendered. So basically what it means is that it's showing me this fluid container as is going to be rendered. I don't need to render it to prove it to you. You may imagine it will come as a white block. But if I take this shaded display and I set it to off, it's display only, right? I'm not deleting the density, I'm not changing the simulation. It's the same, exactly the same thing. I'm just not showing it. That helps a lot to free up memory of your video card and make your scene work faster again. So I know that the density is there, but I don't need to see it. I can see my guy now. Looks good. How do I know, for example, how are things inside that box? Is that air where he is turbulent, or is it calm, or is what's going on? How do I know? Because all I see is this big white blob. It's hard for me to read it. And you're right. It's impossible to determine what's happening just by looking at it like that. Luckily, we have under the same display tab, we have your best friend in here, which is going to be called the velocity draw. This little box here. Velocity draw is going to do this and display the velocity vectors inside your fluid. And yes, this is a lot, but you also have a skip factor. Okay, you can reduce, it's just a display, okay, so you can see less. But here it tells you pretty much what's going on inside. As you can see, density is bouncing off the walls, going down, bouncing on the floor, coming up, and you get these little arrows telling you that, yeah, there's a lot of velocities in here. There's a lot of velocities out there. If you want to understand it even better, you can draw and take this length and kind of see. Okay, if you go back and forth, it tells you the motion, okay, of the velocity inside the container. This motion, okay, this velocity is what's going to drive the particles. So you need to have something like this that looks cool. You see why it's important to have a closed box? Okay, you see how the density here just comes up, bounces down the wall, bounces on the floor, comes back up, swirling. That's what you want, swirls. So use this to understand where they come from. So go back and forth and say, oh, okay, this is the way they're moving. Great, I like it. So velocity draw, very, very important stuff. Okay, I'm gonna turn it off. This is a basic container. We haven't touched much, but I think it's a good opportunity for me to bring some particles in already. So I'm gonna rewind, I'm gonna hit play, and I'm gonna start testing and see if this thing works. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna create a regular particle emitter. There he is. Right now it's a cylinder, but I wanna fill the environment with ash, right? Just like in the shot. So I'm gonna grab my emitter and I'm gonna change it from a cylinder to a cube. And I'm also gonna put some dimension in here. Okay, remember that the particles have to be inside this cube. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the front view. And I'm gonna make sure that my emitter is not bigger than the fluid container. Right, that's fine. Okay. And I'm gonna make sure that it's in the center. Right, and there it is. No, it's perfectly fine. And then here, somewhere like that. Okay, so it's close to the size of the container, but not quite. I don't want particles to be born outside because they're not going to look good. So this is my particle emitter. Because I want to test now the particles, I'm going to grab my fluid, okay, remember, and it's a good idea to disable it. Okay, so I'm going to save my scene. I'm going to name a few things. So these particles are going to be the ash, right? This is going to be ash emitter. This is my fluid one, which can be called Atmos or air. And my fluid emitter, which is fine. Okay. We could try to put probably the, well, it doesn't matter. I was going to put the fluid in a container, but I can do that later. No worries. Okay, good. So I get my ash and my particles. So I'm going to grab my emitter and I'm going to make sure that I'm outputting a lot of particles. So I'm going to start with, let's say, 3,000 particles a second, just to see. There they are. Good. Perfect. Okay, particles are born. They're there. I don't want them to be moved at all by the force, the emitter itself. So I'm going to go in and change a few things. I'm going to go in and remove my speed. And I'm also going to take away from axis and away from center. I'm going to turn them off. I want these particles to be born and stay. Just like that. I'm also going to determine a set amount of particles. I don't want the particles to be born in midair all the time. So I want to make sure that I have enough. God damn it. Okay. That I have enough particles. So I have right now 22,000. So it took me, that's fine. I'm going to set it to 30,000 particles as my max count. And I'm going to grab my emitter and I'm going to bump this up to 300,000 particles. I'm sorry, that's 30,000 to 300,000 particles a second, just so I get my 30,000 particles right away, right? We've done this before. Okay, there's 30,000 little bits of ash that need to move. Okay, if I look through my camera just to have an idea where I'm going, here I am. Looking at this, you may think, well, yeah, we might need to widen the container, and yeah, probably, you're right. I'll leave that up to you, just so you get it perfect. Me being the way I am, I'm just gonna move it closer, and my problem is solved. So for that, I'm just going to keyframe. I'm gonna remove the keyframes on my camera. I'm gonna grab my camera. Okay. I'm gonna remove these keyframes. And I'm going to keyframe it at this new position. And you're done. Okay, 30,000 particles in here. I get my fluid container, I get my guy. I need to get these particles to move. How do I do that? Well, I need to connect the fluid to the particles as a force. And that may sound complicated to some of you. You may be thinking, well, what do I have to do, Mel? I have to do something funky, crazy technique? Some dark secret that Luis is going to show me? I'm sorry to disappoint you, but no, it's quite simple. Grab your particles, go to the window, Relationship Editors, Dynamic Relationship. We'll be here many times before. And guess what? My container shows up already as a field. All I need to do is click on it. Done. Now, the velocities inside the fluid container are going to be the ones moving around these particles. How cool is that? Let's test it. I'm going to grab my fluid, which is right here. I'm going to turn it back on. I need some water, excuse me for a second. Okay, thank you. All right, so my fluid container is re-enabled. The connections have been made. We just need to test this thing. It's a good idea to save before you do something new like that. And try it. And look, they're moving. Beautiful. Excuse me. But what happened? Beautiful shape, but they left. What the hell? I look at it and they're gone. That's crap. You don't want that. So what do we do? I wish I had you present to ask you the question in person, but what would you do? And I can bet that 90% of you will tell me a collision. Luis, put a collision, make a container or make a box and then have the particles, make the box the same size of the fluid container and have those particles collide and bounce. Wrong. What did I say from the very beginning? Try to avoid collisions as much as possible. Yeah. And even then, you don't want that. You don't want the particles to be inside the volume because of a collision. You want them to follow the fluid, the density, right? The density doesn't escape. You saw it. The density stays inside the container. What the hell the particles are leaving? And again, I wish I had you in front of me, present, or at least in the live classroom, right, on the work group. I wish. I can ask you that, look at you and ask you, see your face. Because you may think, well, what do I do? What do I do? Why is that? Why are the particles leaving the container if the density is not leaving the container? I'll leave you there for 10 seconds more. Why? All right. It's my time to answer, right? The particles have a conserve of 1. God damn it. They have a conserve of 1. So what does it mean? It means that the particles are getting the velocity from the fluid and they carry it and never lose it. So yeah, they get pushed inside and the density stays, but once you reach the edge, the particle just pushes away and goes away because it just conserves energy from the last time the fluid moved it. So the trick here is, if you want to move the particles inside the container without using collisions and just by following the density, right? The trick is to set the conserve to 0. And again, I can hear your brain working and thinking, but if you set it to 0, they're not going to move. No, it's not right. Remember that conserve of zero means that the particle will only move if there is a force directly applied to it. That's why I said I don't want particles being born outside my fluid, because they will just stand there static. And that's annoying. So I want my particles to be born inside the fluid, let the fluid move them with a conserve of zero. And that means they will follow directly and exactly the velocity inside the container. That will be the only reason why they will move. Let's try it again. Come closer. And look, they move inside the container. No walls, no collisions, no headaches. I can tell my wife to be ready because I'm going to take her to the movies tonight. That is Friday. I don't have to work late today. Well, how cool is that? I can make plans with my friends for the weekend. I can watch my Formula One race on Sunday. I don't have to go to the office and spend time there because, I'm doing a simulation that has collisions and it's not looking right and it's just a mess. Look at this. They move because the fluid moves. And I can guarantee you no one of them is escaping this thing. So how cool is that? Pretty cool, right? All right. But still, Jake, call him Jake. Jake is not really influencing anything. He's just walking around. There's no connection between the fluid, the particles, and him at all. But at least I get my particles moving. That's pretty cool. All right, how do I do that? A couple of things that we need to do before that. We always have to do them with particles as usual. We're going to go here and we're going to randomize our mass always, remember. Do that at birth. Okay, so I can just say that this is a random number between the usual 1 and 2, for example. If you're going to render this as points later on, then it would be a good idea to add a radius. Radius per particle, add it, and set it to something. I like to relate the radius with the mass. I think it's important. So I can just say that the radius is equal to the mass for now. Of course, they're going to be massive particles, right? Because they're random, between 1 and 2 is too much. So I can probably do mass, and then you say multiply by 0.1, for example. So 10 times less radius, and you can make this multiplier, adjusted to make the particles radius look better. But at least it will be a relationship between the speed of the particle and its size. So the big ones move slower than the little ones, right? This is a good technique, good practice. All right, done there. That's going to affect a little bit the simulation. Let's look at it. Some of them are heavier, so they tend to move a little bit slower, but it's going to look cool. Okay. Good. All right. What else do we do? Well, how do we involve Jake into this mix? Very important, right? How do we get him involved? What happens when Jake in the film, or a person for that matter, moves inside a volume, right? You're disturbing the air, right? So basically you're causing the movement of your arms and your hand. If you wave your hands, okay, that's just pushing air around. It's pushing air around. You have already the air in this box, right? Because it's the density. What do I need to do is push it around. So as I move, I push the air, and that gives a motion that connects me with my environment. That's what we're going to do with him. So we're going to grab him, as you can see. Just rewind. So I'm going to grab Jake. I'm going to grab my container. And I'm going to go to the Fluids menu, and I'm going to go to Add Edit Content. And I'm going to Emit from Object. Once again, do you see why it's better to learn particles first? You have seen Emit from Object 100 times. You know exactly what it does. So what is going to happen, guys and gals? you're going to get an emitter from this surface, just like with particles. You see how easy it is now to understand fluids now that you understand particles? Cool, huh? Click that, and on the outliner, as you may now imagine, you get your guy, and under that you get an emitter. Very cool. So what are we going to do with this emitter? And I think we just answered our own question a couple minutes ago when I said, what happens when the guy walks around? Why is it connected? What makes him connected? And we said he pushes the air around. And I can probably guess some of you who have a little bit of practice with fluids, but not enough, you will think, well, but I can make a collision between the guy and the fluid. And yes, you can, but try to avoid collisions as much as possible. It's not going to be the same. And it's going to take longer. It's going to look ugly. So no collisions. No collisions. We said he's pushing the air around. I didn't say he's emitting air around, right? He's not emitting air. He's just pushing the air. The air already exists. We as humans, we don't create air with our hands and feet as we move, right? We just push it. If you're underwater and you move your hands, you're not creating more water. You're just displacing that water around, correct? Cool. That's the key. I say that and I put so much emphasis in it because of that, how important it is. We are not creating air. So I got my emitter here for the human. If we are not creating air, I don't need to emit air density. I don't need to. Even less heat and even less fuel. And you will say, well, then you went crazy, Luis, because if you're not emitting density, heat, or fuel, what the hell are you doing with that emitter? True, right? You may be thinking that. He finally went nuts. It's 12:33 in the morning. He's crazy. He's sleepy. He needs to go to bed, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's not the case. There's more. If you open down here, you get emission of speed. Like I said, we are not emitting air, right? If we're underwater, we don't emit water. We push it. To push it around, you can use emission of speed. So you're going to go to the speed method. Right now it says no emission, so there's no velocity being emitted. I'm going to say replace. And later with time, we're going to talk about the different methods, right? There's add and replace. Just right now, replace is what the name implies. We're going to replace the velocity at that point with the velocity that the emitter is giving. Let's just leave it at that. With practice, it will make more sense to you. In simple terms, replace is a more drastic effect as adding. Just leave it like that. If you want something more, if you want to see it quickly, the effect of it, just put replace. For the velocity, I mean. Okay, so we're going to replace the velocity, and we're going to inherit, okay, the velocity of the guy. 1 means 100%, just like with particles, you see? How cool. Okay, so inherit velocity means that the velocity of the guy, of the geometry, is going to be passed on to the container. And because you're putting velocity, that's going to move the air around, just like it happens in real life. All right, one trick, and something to put on your notes. If your emitter is moving, regardless of being a guy emitting velocity off, or if you have this fluid container, if that container is moving for some reason, then you need to check always this box called motion streak. Motion streak is going to help you have a smooth emission as the object moves. Right now this guy is walking slowly, so it shouldn't be a problem. But if you have a bullet, or you have a missile, or you have something that is flying really quickly, you may get like those little gaps in between emission points. So you get like emission gap. So you get like a dotted line of fluid, for example. And it happens with particles too. So motion streak, you have to turn it on because Maya will help you fill in those gaps. So it will look smooth. My point is, if your emitter is walking or moving, okay, then turn it on, always, okay? All right, so we get nothing emitting here, so we're not messing with our container. We're only emitting velocity. We're inheriting 100% of it, and we checked motion streak. That's good. So what I'm going to do now is take my particles and turn them off. I'm going to take my fluid container and I'm going to enable it, and I'm going to set the velocity draw to on so I can see what's going on and see if that is really happening, that if it's really doing, you know, the emission of velocity in here. So let's take a look. Here it goes. It moves, but I don't see anything at all. What do I say in these situations? Don't panic. Don't worry. Let's see. It looks like it's not being calculated, right? Because it's very quick. So basically, I checked this on, and I just saw my own mistake. It was enabled. I just disabled it. You see? No need to panic. I'll actually enable that. I disabled my particles. Let me just double check that. Yes, that's good. Now, okay, I have my fluid simulation. There are my velocities. What I'm looking for now is when he starts walking, I want to see something that tells me that he's actually doing something. Let's wait for him to start moving. Here he goes. And I can see, can you see? Hopefully you can see it. Okay, there you go. You see those vectors pointing that way? And some of them pointing this way. We could probably skip a few more. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have him move. You can see, you see he's walking and he's affecting the velocities. You see, look at it. Very cool. If you want to amplify this effect, then you can just grab the velocity emitter, which is right here, and augment that, put that to 2. Take a look. Very cool, look. I like it. Grab this so you can see the arrows a little bit better. Definitely he is moving around and the density, okay, is being affected by him. There we go. See? It almost feels like he's walking, you know, almost like a current of water or something. And at the end of the day, fluids are like that, right? You have wind tunnels, and then you have those little tunnels on the water thing that you use with little cars to see the flow. Same thing. Okay, this works. Perfect. I'm happy. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to rewind. I'm going to turn my particles back on. I'm going to save my scene, which is very important. And I'm going to test it. This emitter is getting on my way. It's a bit uncomfortable. But I don't want to hide it, because if you hide it, then the emission is not correct. So what I will do is put that in its own layer, as always. All right. At least I have more space to see. Particles are turned, everything is good. Save one more time, why not? And run it. Okay, particles are there. I think it's easier to see them this way. Okay, let's see what they do. To wait for him to start moving. Okay, I can see it working. It might be tricky for you to see. If it's tricky for you to see, then what I will advise you to do is to set the particle render type from point to streaks. And here will be a lot easier for you to see what's going on. There we go. Look at him. Look at him go. Moving stuff around. Beautiful. All right, remember that I put the velocity inheritance to 2, so it could be a little bit too much, but I wouldn't just count on it, because these things need to be visible, they need to be a bit stronger. Okay, so I like it. That's kind of good. So it works, what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we need more particles, we need a couple more changes, but it does work. You see, he walks around and the particles move. Look how beautiful that looks. Just wait a minute for him to start walking. There he goes. Look how cool, man. I'm gonna come closer. You see how the particles follow him and they move to the sides in a big, nice swirly pattern, you know? Very interesting. Let's look at it through the camera. You see? It's definitely disturbing the air. Very cool. So it works. Okay, good. What I'm going to do now is just polish it up and make it look a little bit nicer. A couple of tweaks that we can do. One thing we can do is grab our container. Okay, go to the attribute for it. And I'm going to do a couple of changes that I always do with fluids, regardless of what I'm doing. So you should always do these things. So I'm going to go to the Dynamic Simulation tab of the fluid container. I'm going to scroll down, and a couple of things that is worth doing. One of them is the high detail solve. I'm going to set it to all grids. What this is going to do is just put more effort, let's say, into the calculations of this fluid, as it says, high detail solve. So it's solving the algorithms and the formulas with more precision. So it's always needed. It's turned off by default because Maya wants the fluid to be as fast as possible at the beginning and let the user add more complexity as needed. So I always find this necessary. Also, the quality, I'm going to increase it from 20 to 200. Same idea, it's the quality of the calculation. So it's a nicer, more stable simulation. That's going to translate into what? It was a little bit slower, you can see here. That's all. But it's more precise, so it's important. I'm going to let this run. I just, the simulation, I have the animation for the character, I have it starting at frame 70 because I like to have the fluids, containers to set up and settle, on their own, right, before the simulation begins. So when he starts walking, I have enough density and velocities inside the container for the particles to look cool, that's all. So there you go, perfect. So it's a bit nicer in terms of the way it's calculated, right? Okay, so that's working. I'm happy with that. A couple more things that I want to do. Scroll down to the content details. Go to the velocity tab and activate swirl. It's going to help make little round eddies in the air. Okay, so you will see the density go and curl on its own. It's a nice touch. So I'm going to put that to, let's say, 10. Again, we're going to go over all the attributes slowly. You should be watching Maya Dynamics level 2, remember? But as we use the attributes, okay, we're going to be changing them lesson by lesson. You're going to learn them all. So don't worry about, a very boring class. Like I said, going one at a time. Let's just start using them. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing with you. Okay, so swirl, set it to 10. I'm happy with that. And I'm also going to go open the density tab. And I'm going to take let's say, the buoyancy, which is what makes the particles rise up in the air. Sorry, the fluid to go up. I'm going to reduce that a little bit to 0.5. Okay. Let me just try it one more time. I'm going to make my particles begin later because I don't need the particles to start so early with the fluid, right? I can have the particles begin. Let's say the animation begins at frame 70. I can probably have the particles, because it takes one frame for them to be born, I'm just going to have the start frame set it to, let's say, 65 frames. So there's no particles up to frame 65. That's going to speed up a little bit the situation. Okay, you can see that my fluid is moving. The simulation is going, the velocities are outputting. So that's good. Let everything move and go. Okay, once we get to frame 70, we're going to have a proper setup container and the simulation can begin. Think about something. We're using a 1-to-1 ratio, so we're pretty cool. Okay, particles are born, particles are moving. Okay, he's walking around, and he's moving around the air, as you can see, and pushing them away. Very, very cool. You got it all the elements you need. Perfect. Okay. Assignment for this lesson, give me something looking really nice. Using this technique, okay, this example. I want to see something walking through ash or through air, particles, or through whatever you want, but try to follow these directions first. Let's go one step at a time. So again, I'm gonna upload the C file without the container, so you can set it all up yourselves. But this is what we have. This is what you need. Beautiful. Okay, perfect. I think it's enough for another lesson. I think you have enough to practice. Fluids are tricky, but they're very fun. They're very powerful. You can see here how we can get away with a lot. You don't worry too much about the shading or the lighting or nothing. Just a nice, cool particle simulation. Okay, we're doing very, very interesting stuff. So enjoy yourselves. Okay, have fun. Try to do it. Remember to post all the details about your container when you post on the Facebook group. So give me the ratio. Give me how many voxels you're using, just to start getting into the habit of doing that. So with that, well, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next lesson. Have a good night. Bye-bye.